Chapter 1. The Encounter. The ship cut through the void of space with the grace of a blade slicing through water. Its sleek, silvery hull gleamed under the distant light of a faraway star, cutting silently through the galaxy's uncharted corners. Aboard this ship, nestled in one of the most advanced spacecraft built by the humans, was a young Arathian named Nyara. She had been sent on an assignment, one that was unlike anything she had ever experienced before. For the first time in her life, she had been chosen for a mission that took her away from her peaceful, serene planet of Taliax 5, far from her family and the familiar tranquil life she had known. Taliax 5 was a planet of peace, of intellectual pursuits, a place where emotions were carefully cultivated and controlled. The Arathians were, by nature, an introspective species, always seeking harmony and balance in the most profound ways. For centuries, they had explored the depths of their minds, meditated in the presence of the stars, and lived in a culture that prized wisdom and self-restraint above all. Nyara had always felt at peace with this way of life. But the mission she had been given was far from the kind of serene intellectual pursuit she was used to. She had been tasked with something more personal. A diplomatic mission, it had been called, though Nyara was sure that the diplomatic nature of her assignment was little more than a cover for what was truly happening. It was an effort to bridge the cultural gaps between her people and a race of beings that had remained largely unknown to the Arathians for centuries. Humans. The fact that she, a young and somewhat shy Arathian, had been chosen to interact with these humans was both an honor and an overwhelming responsibility. The Arathians had only met humans in brief, non-threatening encounters, and they had always been wary of how different they were, how unpredictable their emotions seemed compared to the calm nature of the Arathians. But Nyara had always been fascinated by these humans. Her studies had shown that their emotional depth was something unique, something that the Arathians struggled to comprehend, and she had been given the chance to explore it firsthand. As the ship glided through space, Nyara couldn't help but think about the human she would meet, the one chosen to be her match, the person she would have to communicate with in a way that was beyond the intellectual exchanges her people were used to. She had been briefed on their ways, but no amount of training or study could prepare her for the real thing. She didn't even know what to expect. The humans were different, so very different from her people. They were driven by emotions that often seemed unpredictable, chaotic, and overwhelming. Could she really understand them? Could she find a way to bridge the divide between the two species? The ship's smooth hum was interrupted by the faint buzz of her communicator, signaling that they had reached their destination. Nyara's heart fluttered in her chest, the first trace of nervousness creeping in despite her efforts to maintain control. The planet that appeared before her was called Earth, a vibrant world brimming with life and conflict, full of diversity and emotion. It was the opposite of Taliax 5, where peace had reigned for millennia, and any disruption was seen as a potential source of great distress. Here, on Earth, the people were not bound by the same calm restraint that had governed Nyara's life. The thought of meeting someone from this chaotic, emotional species was both exhilarating and terrifying. As the ship descended toward the Earth's atmosphere, Nyara made sure her appearance was perfect. The Arathians were not known for flamboyance, and their physical form was delicate and graceful, with violet skin that shimmered slightly in the right light, eyes that reflected the deep, contemplative nature of their souls, and small, lithe bodies built for quick movements and silence. She adjusted her simple attire, a flowing robe-like garment that signified her people's preference for comfort and subtlety. The humans would surely find her unusual, even strange, but she had no intention of startling them more than necessary. She was determined to make this work. As the ship finally touched down on the surface of Earth, Nyara's breath caught in her chest. She could feel the tension in the air, the electric buzz of human life that thrummed just beneath the surface. The planet's atmosphere was thick with energy, the kind that made Nyara's chest tighten in anticipation. The ground was a little warmer than she had expected, the dirt beneath her feet more solid and heavy than the floating, ethereal plains of Taliax 5. She stepped out of the ship, her body moving with a grace that was second nature, and she was greeted by a sight that stole her breath away. The humans were not like the Arathians in any way. Where Nyara's people had perfected their peaceful way of life over millennia, the humans were, to her eyes, raw, untamed, and infinitely complex. They walked with confidence, their expressions often filled with passion, humor, and something that she could not yet understand. The colors of their world were vibrant and alive, the sky above stretching out in shades of blue and pink as the sun began to set in the distance. It was nothing like the muted colors of Taliax 5. Nyara's mind was racing with questions, yet all she could do was follow the instructions on her communicator. The human she had come to meet would be waiting for her at the designated meeting spot, a public location where the two species could interact freely. As she made her way toward the gathering place, Nyara couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. She was supposed to make an impression, to find a way to connect with this human on a personal level. She had trained for this, studied their behavior and social customs, but she couldn't shake the feeling that nothing could prepare her for the reality of the situation. She had always been a shy, introverted individual, and the thought of meeting someone who embodied everything she had studied and yet could not fully understand was overwhelming. When Nyara finally arrived at the designated meeting place, she saw him. A human male. He was tall, his build broad and strong, his features striking but not in a way that was immediately alarming. His hair was dark and tousled, and his eyes, the color of the deep earth oceans, locked onto her with an intensity that made her heart beat a little faster. There was something about the way he stood, confident, open, and undeniably present, that made Nyara's nerves flare. He was everything she wasn't, everything her people were taught not to be. She hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to proceed. She had read about how humans greeted one another. Some cultures embraced, some bowed, some exchanged words immediately, but she wasn't sure how she was supposed to start. Her instinct was to retreat into herself, to let her natural shyness protect her. But there was something about him, something magnetic, that made her feel different. His eyes softened, and he took a step forward, his gaze not probing but curious, kind. "You must be Nyara," he said, his voice low and smooth, with a slight accent she couldn't place. "I'm Marcus. Welcome to Earth." The words were simple, yet they sent a jolt of warmth through her chest. He didn't seem to be nervous at all. His presence was unassuming, confident, but not overpowering. Nyara blinked, unsure of how to respond, her usual calm composure cracking for a moment. She had prepared herself for a polite introduction, for a formal exchange of pleasantries, but the way he spoke to her made her feel something she hadn't anticipated. This wasn't just an introduction. It felt like he saw her. The real her. The part of her that was still unsure, still hesitant. Her violet skin flushed with an unfamiliar warmth, and her heart beat a little faster in her chest. It's nice to meet you, Marcus," Nyara stammered, her voice soft but sincere. She immediately regretted her words. She sounded nervous, unlike herself. But there was something about this human, something disarming. As they stood there, facing one another, a silence stretched between them, comfortable, expectant, and filled with an energy Nyara couldn't quite name. She felt the weight of the moment, the anticipation of everything that was about to unfold. This was her match, her human counterpart. But she wasn't prepared for what was about to happen. She didn't know it yet, but their encounter would change both of their lives forever. "You're way bigger than I thought," Nyara muttered under her breath, her cheeks flushing even more. She instantly regretted saying it. She had read that humans were sensitive to comments about their size, and here she was, blushing and making an awkward remark. But Marcus just laughed, a warm and genuine sound that made her heart flutter in a way she wasn't prepared for. "I'm not that big," he said with a grin. "But I'm glad to know I've impressed you." Nyara's face burned as Marcus's laughter echoed in her ears. She wanted to sink into the ground, to retreat into the familiar comfort of her people's calm, collected behavior. But there was something about Marcus that made her feel alive in a way she had never felt before, something that made her lose her usual composed nature. She had trained for this moment, studied human interaction in great detail, but no amount of academic preparation could have prepared her for the reality of meeting a human. His gaze softened, as if he could sense her discomfort. "Don't worry, Nyara. It's all right. I promise you, you're not the first to say that. Earthlings have a tendency to be, well, less graceful than Arathians," Marcus said with a smile that felt like the warmth of sunlight. It was an easy smile, one that put her at ease, but it also made her heart flutter in ways she didn't know how to process. "Nyara, still trying to calm the rapid beating of her heart, forced a small smile. "I'm sorry," she muttered, still embarrassed. "I didn't mean to be rude. I've just never been this close to a human before. I didn't know how big. I mean, how dash," she trailed off, cursing herself. Marcus chuckled again, the sound genuine and carefree, which made her feel a little better, but only a little. It was still difficult for her to focus on the conversation with the storm of emotions crashing inside her. She had spent her entire life surrounded by tranquility, practicing control and discipline, but this human Marcus was somehow throwing all that she had learned into disarray. She was supposed to be calm, collected. She had to maintain her composure. But here she was, on an alien planet, feeling out of place, disoriented, and unsure. "You're doing fine, really," Marcus said, his voice warm and reassuring. "This is probably a little overwhelming. Not every day you meet someone from another planet, right?" Nyara nodded silently, her violet skin glowing faintly as the evening light filtered through the trees behind him. Her hands subconsciously fidgeted at her sides as she tried to focus on the conversation, on the task at hand. She was here for a purpose. She had to be the bridge between the Arathians and humans, to understand them, to find a way to make their interaction meaningful. But all she could focus on now was how different he was from everything she had been taught to expect. "I've read about humans," Nyara started, her voice hesitant but becoming more steady as she found her footing. "But I didn't think I would meet someone like you. Your emotions, they're difficult to understand. You're so open. It's strange." Marcus tilted his head slightly, considering her words. "Strange, huh? Yeah, I guess we humans are a little messy. You can't always control what you feel, but sometimes that's not a bad thing. It makes us real, I think." Nyara blinked, not sure how to respond. She wasn't used to such openness. In her world, the Arathians had always prized the control of emotions nothing was ever allowed to show. It was all about balance, understanding the logic behind every action and reaction. Yet, the more she stood in front of Marcus, the more she realized how little she understood this chaotic species. And it was overwhelming, but also captivating. "I can't imagine living like that," Nyara murmured, mostly to herself. "Well, you'd be surprised," Marcus replied with a shrug. "It's just how we are. We feel everything, all the time. But, enough about me," he added, suddenly changing the topic, as if realizing the deep line of thought he had just opened up. "Why don't we get to know each other a bit better? I can show you around, get you settled in here, and maybe answer any questions you've got about Earth or humans." Nyara hesitated. The idea of being shown around by someone she barely knew made her nervous. She didn't know what she was supposed to do. Should she stay detached? Should she engage in this human way of connecting? But looking at Marcus, seeing the curiosity and open expression in his eyes, the warmth that seemed to emanate from his very being, she realized that she had already stepped too far into the unknown. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to accept that things wouldn't go as planned. "Okay," Nyara finally said, her voice quieter but more resolute. "I think that would be nice." The instant she said the words, she felt the strange pull of something deep inside her chest, something unexplainable. The connection, the bond between them, was undeniable. It wasn't just his openness, it was the way he made her feel in this moment. Vulnerable, yet safe. Uncertain, but also intrigued. There was something magnetic about Marcus, and it left Nyara with no clear answers. All she knew was that her time on Earth would not be like anything she had expected. Chapter 2. A Clash of Cultures. The next few hours were a whirlwind. Marcus led Nyara through the bustling human settlement, offering explanations of everything she saw, as if she needed it. Earth was a world of contrasts. The advanced technology that filled the air, the loud, jarring sounds of human voices all around them, the smells, some pleasant, others overwhelming, and the vibrant colors of the plants, the sky, and even the people. It was all so alive compared to the muted, controlled environment of Taliax 5, and it was, for better or worse, utterly fascinating. They passed through a marketplace, the air filled with chatter, laughter, and the rustle of fabric. Humans were everywhere, some talking, some shopping, some eating together at tables. Nyara had never seen so many people in one place, and she couldn't help but be amazed by the ease with which they interacted. There was no hesitation, no second-guessing in their conversations. No walls. The way they lived free, exposed was so different from the Arathians, who were trained from birth to conceal their thoughts, to always remain measured. Here on Earth, we live with our emotions, Marcus explained as they walked past a group of children playing with a ball, their laughter infectious and carefree. We express joy, sadness, anger, whatever we feel in the moment. It's how we connect with each other. We don't bottle things up. I can see that, Nyara replied, her eyes scanning the scene around her. She was both mesmerized and overwhelmed by the openness of it all, unsure of how to react. But it's so unrestrained. It must be difficult to control. Sometimes, yeah, it's tough, Marcus said, giving a half smile. But that's the beauty of it. We're all in this together. The good, the bad, the ugly, it all connects us. And you'll see, Nyara, when you open up, when you let yourself feel, it's like a whole new world. She nodded, but inside, she wasn't sure what to make of his words. She had always been taught that control was essential. It was the foundation of peace. Yet, here, in front of Marcus, she was beginning to realize that perhaps this wasn't the full picture. There was something raw about humans, something dangerous and beautiful all at once. As they continued walking, Marcus led her to a small cafe. It was modest, but full of life, with people laughing and talking over hot cups of coffee and tea. He gestured for her to sit. Okay, now that we've gotten a glimpse of Earth's chaos, let's talk, Marcus said, his smile broadening. I want to know more about you, about Arathians. What's it like to be so controlled? Nyara paused, her heart suddenly racing. She had expected this question, but now that it was here, she wasn't sure how to answer. What could she say? Could she explain the rigid structure of her people's emotions? Could she explain how it felt to live without the freedom to express the rawness of life? How could she explain that, to her, it was both a blessing and a curse? I don't know how to explain it, Nyara began, her voice thoughtful, almost hesitant. It's not that we don't feel, but we keep everything in balance. We meditate, study, seek peace in all things. Our emotions are. She paused, searching for the right words. Restrained. We believe in self-control, in always maintaining harmony. I think that's why I've always found humans so difficult to understand. You don't hide what you feel. You live in it. Marcus looked at her with curiosity, his expression softening. And do you ever wish you could let go? Just feel everything. Nyara's throat tightened as she thought about his question. She wasn't sure she could even imagine a life where she wasn't so tightly wound, so controlled. But the thought of being free, of being able to express herself without fear of breaking the peace she had always known, it was both terrifying and strangely appealing. She wasn't sure what that would feel like, but she wanted to know. Yes, she said, her voice quieter now. I do. Sometimes, I wonder what it would be like. The silence between them stretched, but it was comfortable. There was no judgment in his gaze, no expectation. He was simply there, listening, and for the first time in a long time, Nyara felt like maybe she could take a step toward letting go. She could let herself be more than just the carefully composed Arathian she had always been. She could be something else, something new. And just as that thought settled into her mind, she heard Marcus speak again, this time with a teasing note in his voice. Well, you're definitely bigger than I thought, too. I mean, I knew Arathians were small, but wow. Nyara blinked, stunned by the sudden shift in tone. She couldn't help herself. She blushed deeply, the warmth rushing to her cheeks. This is way bigger than alien males, she muttered under her breath, feeling utterly embarrassed and unable to hide the sudden rush of heat in her face. Marcus's grin widened. What was that? You're not escaping that one, Nyara. Her heart raced, but instead of retreating into herself, she looked at him, startled by the words that came next. I think I'm starting to like Earth, she said softly. The next few hours seemed to unfold in a surreal blur for Nyara. She had never experienced anything quite like this open, unrestrained way that humans lived. The world around her was filled with vibrant colors, the voices of a million different lives blending into a cacophony of noise. Yet there was a strange harmony to it, a chaotic beauty that Nyara couldn't help but be drawn to. It was nothing like the calculated peace of Taliax 5, the steady rhythm of life where every emotion, every action, was carefully controlled. Here, emotions flowed freely like a river, sometimes calm, sometimes wild, but always moving. And in that movement, there was something undeniably real. Marcus guided her through the bustling streets of the human city, a place that felt both alien and familiar to her. Humans, with their tall, sturdy frames and wild, untamed emotions, brushed past them, laughing, talking, living without the constraints that Nyara had known her whole life. And yet, the more she observed, the more she found herself fascinated by the intricacies of their behavior. The way they smiled without reservation, how they laughed, how their faces contorted with every emotion they felt, it was all so human. It was beautiful, in a way that Nyara couldn't quite explain. And as she walked beside Marcus, she found herself not just studying humans anymore, but starting to understand the very depth of their existence. "So, do you always blush this much?" Marcus asked, his voice teasing yet gentle, as they walked through a park near the cafe they had stopped at earlier. Nyara's violet skin, which had seemed to glow softly under the artificial lights of the cafe, was now a deeper shade, the heat rising in her face again. She couldn't help it every time he made a light-hearted comment. It felt like an electric current shooting through her, making her feel both seen and exposed at the same time. She could tell that Marcus wasn't mocking her, but there was something about his easygoing nature that threw her off balance. She wasn't used to this openness. Her people never expressed such obvious vulnerability, especially not to strangers. I don't know," Nyara replied, her voice soft, though there was an undeniable warmth behind her words. "I'm not used to interacting like this. You're different from what I expected." Marcus stopped walking, turning to face her fully. His eyes were soft, not teasing anymore, but serious in a way that made Nyara's heart race. "I'm different?" he asked, his lips curving into a small, knowing smile. "Well, I suppose that's fair. I mean, you are kind of a walking mystery to me. But I'll tell you this, there's nothing wrong with being different. We're all different in our own ways, and honestly, that's what makes us interesting." Nyara blinked at him, feeling her breath catch. This was one of those moments where his words seemed to cut deeper than she expected. There was something about his openness, the way he spoke so simply, yet with such sincerity, that made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt before. She realized she had been holding her breath, waiting for him to make a joke or to shy away from her alien nature. But instead, he was accepting her without hesitation, without the usual cool distance she had been accustomed to. "But you've never met someone like me before, have you?" Nyara asked, her voice quiet as she felt a strange vulnerability bubble up within her. Marcus met her gaze without flinching, his eyes thoughtful. "No, I haven't. But that doesn't mean I'm going to treat you like you're some alien experiment. I'm curious about you, Nyara, not because you're different, but because, I don't know, you just seem real. Like there's more to you than what you're letting on." The words, though simple, struck her like a bolt of lightning. She had always been a quiet observer of the world around her, watching her people and the humans from a distance, trying to understand them through logic and reason. But Marcus was different. He wasn't trying to analyze her or probe her like she was some puzzle to be solved. He was simply there, with her. And it made her heart beat faster, the strange connection between them growing stronger with every passing second. "I don't know if I can be what you think I am," Nyara admitted, her voice small as she looked away, feeling her confidence waver. "I've spent my whole life being controlled. I've never really been free to feel what I want to feel. I don't know how to just be." Marcus reached out, his hand resting gently on her arm. The touch was warm, comforting, and though it sent a jolt of electricity through her body, it didn't feel threatening. It felt grounding, as if he were pulling her back into reality. "You don't have to have it all figured out," he said softly. "We don't. I don't. But if you let yourself, you'll find that being free, being open, isn't as scary as it seems. It's not about perfection, it's about being who you are, without fear of judgment." Nyara swallowed hard, her mind racing. There it was again, the pull she felt whenever he was near. The calm, steady rhythm of her own thoughts seemed to fade, replaced by the raw intensity of the moment. She wasn't used to this kind of openness, this feeling that she was truly seen, not as an object of study, but as a person. She had spent her life controlling her emotions, keeping them in check, but in Marcus's presence, she felt something stir inside her, something that longed to break free. She didn't know if she was ready for it, but it was undeniable. The connection between them was deepening, whether she was ready for it or not. "I'll try," she whispered, the words barely audible, yet they felt like the truth. I'll try to be more open. I don't want to hide anymore. Marcus smiled, a genuine warmth in his eyes. Good. I'm glad to hear that. His smile softened as he looked at her with such understanding that it made her chest tighten, with something unfamiliar, something that made her heart race even faster. For the first time, Nyara allowed herself to take a deep breath, to let go of the walls she had spent years building around her emotions. Maybe, just maybe, she could embrace the vulnerability she had been avoiding all her life. Chapter 3. The Invitation. Over the next few days, Nyara and Marcus grew closer, their bond deepening as they shared more of themselves. It was a strange and exhilarating experience for Nyara. She had never known such openness, such raw emotions, and yet it felt right. With Marcus, she felt more human than she ever had before, more connected to the world around her, despite the fact that she was not from this planet. Marcus continued to show her around, taking her to places she never imagined she would visit. They walked through bustling streets, visited quiet parks, and spent long hours talking over cups of coffee in small, cozy cafes. It was during these moments of quiet conversation that Nyara felt herself truly coming alive. She realized that she had spent so much of her life trapped inside her own mind, holding her emotions in check, that she had forgotten what it felt like to simply be. But then, one evening, as they sat in a small park overlooking a lake, Marcus turned to her, his expression a little more serious than usual. "Nyara, I've been thinking," he said, his voice soft, yet steady. "You've been here for a while now, and I know it's been a lot to take in. I think it's time to ask you something." Nyara looked at him, a small knot of curiosity forming in her stomach. "What do you mean?" Marcus took a deep breath and met her gaze, his eyes intense, yet kind. "I want you to stay here. With me. I know this isn't your planet, and I know you have a whole life back on Taliax 5, but there's something about you, Nyara. Something that makes me want to fight for us. To fight for you. I think you've already started to feel it too. The connection between us. It's bigger than just meeting someone new, bigger than any cultural difference. I want you to stay, and I think we could make something real. Together." Nyara's heart skipped a beat. His words hung in the air, heavier than anything she had ever heard in her life. The vulnerability she had felt earlier surged again, but this time, she didn't shy away from it. For the first time, she felt a pull inside her, an overwhelming sense of possibility. She started, but the words caught in her throat. She had never been this open before, never allowed herself to feel something so raw, so unguarded. But there was no denying what she was feeling. "Yes," she whispered, her voice barely audible but filled with certainty. "Yes, Marcus. I want to stay." Marcus's eyes lit up, and in that moment, Nyara felt something shift inside her. The walls she had so carefully built around her heart, the emotional barriers she had kept in place for so long, were slowly crumbling. In Marcus, she had found something she hadn't even known she was searching for: a partner, a match. Someone who saw her, not as a representative of her species, but as a person. And for the first time, she realized that maybe, just maybe, being vulnerable wasn't so scary after all. The world around them seemed to fade away as Marcus reached out, taking her hand in his, and in that moment, Nyara knew her life would never be the same. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions, new experiences, and realizations. Nyara found herself waking up each morning with a sense of anticipation, something she had never truly felt before. Every moment with Marcus felt like a step towards something she couldn't fully comprehend, yet something that felt undeniable. She had always lived with her emotions in check, hidden behind a veil of control and logic. But with Marcus, she was beginning to understand what it felt like to let go, to feel, without fear of judgment, without the need to hide behind the calm demeanor that had defined her existence on Taliax 5. Marcus continued to show her the world, his presence a steady anchor in the storm of uncertainty that had once defined her life. She had never thought much about the chaos of human existence, their ability to express themselves freely, to embrace their vulnerabilities. But now, as she navigated her new life on Earth, she saw it in a new light. Humans were messy, yes, but their messiness was beautiful. Their emotions, raw and unrestrained, were like the colors of a painting, vibrant and intense. There was no hiding, no pretending. They were who they were, unapologetically, and for the first time in her life, Nyara felt a deep sense of belonging. With Marcus by her side, she felt like she could finally embrace the parts of herself that had long been buried. But as much as she had come to cherish the days they spent together, a part of her still wondered if she was making the right decision. What was her future here? What would it mean for her people, the Arathians, to forge such a bond with a human? The weight of her responsibility had not disappeared, even as the connection between her and Marcus deepened. She wasn't sure what her culture would think of this bond, this relationship, but for the first time, it felt like it didn't matter. For the first time, she felt like she had a choice in the matter. One evening, as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Marcus took Nyara to a quiet spot near the outskirts of the city. The air was crisp, the sounds of the city muffled by the distance, and the night was peaceful. They sat together on a bench, the silence between them comfortable, yet filled with an unspoken tension. "Nyara," Marcus said softly, his voice breaking the stillness. "I know things have been moving quickly, but I need to ask you something." She turned to face him, her heart fluttering in her chest. There was a certain seriousness in his tone that made her pulse quicken. Was he going to ask her to leave? To go back to Taliax 5? The thought sent a pang of sadness through her chest, but she quickly pushed it aside, focusing on his words. "I know this might sound a little sudden, but I've been thinking a lot about our future," Marcus continued, his eyes locking onto hers with a deep intensity. "I know we're from different worlds, different cultures, but I can't imagine my life without you in it. I don't know what your people will think of us, but I know what I feel, and I want to build something with you. Here, together." Nyara's breath caught in her throat. His words, though simple, struck her with a force that she wasn't prepared for. She had known there was something between them, something unspoken and undeniable, but hearing it out loud, seeing the sincerity in Marcus's eyes, made her heart swell. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. She had never been asked to make a choice like this, never been asked to commit to something so profoundly uncertain. But in that moment, as she sat next to Marcus, she realized that the choice was no longer about what was expected of her. It was about what she wanted. And what she wanted, deep down, was this. "I want that too," Nyara whispered, her voice barely audible in the stillness of the night. "I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I want to be here. With you." Marcus smiled, a look of relief washing over his face. "You don't have to have all the answers right now," he said, his voice tender. "We'll figure it out together. We don't need to have everything planned. We just need to take it one step at a time." For the first time, Nyara felt a sense of peace settle over her, a feeling that had eluded her for so long. She had spent her entire life seeking balance, seeking control, but now, in Marcus's presence, she realized that maybe she didn't need all the answers. Maybe, just maybe, it was enough to simply live in the moment, to embrace what felt right. And what felt right, at this moment, was being with him. They sat in silence for a while, watching the stars above them. Nyara leaned her head against Marcus's shoulder, feeling the warmth of his body against hers. It was strange, this closeness, but it was also comforting. She wasn't sure what the future held for them, whether their love would be accepted by her people, whether the differences between them would eventually become too great to overcome, but for the first time, she didn't care. All that mattered was that, in this moment, they were together, and that was enough. Chapter 4, The Legacy of Love. The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of discovery and growth. Nyara found herself more and more immersed in human life, learning about their history, their culture, their passions, and their deep, unfiltered emotions. Marcus continued to be her guide, her anchor in this chaotic world, and with every new experience, Nyara felt herself becoming more and more entwined with him, with Earth, and with everything she had once been taught to view with distance. But even as their bond deepened, Nyara knew there were challenges ahead. Her people, the Arathians, had always prided themselves on maintaining control over their emotions, their lives, and their actions. This bond with Marcus, this love, was something that could be seen as a disruption to their delicate balance. She had always known that there would be consequences for her decisions, but now, she wasn't sure she could return to the life she had known. One evening, as the two of them sat in a quiet cafe overlooking a river, Marcus looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Have you thought about going back to Taliax 5? he asked, his voice tentative. About what it would mean for you, for us. Nyara took a deep breath, looking out at the city lights reflecting on the water. The question had been on her mind more than once. She had to face her people eventually. But the thought of leaving Marcus, of returning to a life she no longer felt connected to, filled her with a deep sadness she hadn't anticipated. I don't know, she admitted softly, her voice tinged with uncertainty. I never thought I would be faced with this choice. I was always so sure of who I was, what I was supposed to be. But now, she paused, turning her gaze to Marcus, her heart heavy with emotion. Now, I'm not so sure anymore. Marcus reached for her hand, his fingers warm and steady against hers. Whatever happens, we'll figure it out. Together. I'm not asking you to choose me over your people, Nyara. I just want you to be happy, to find your place. Whether that's here, with me, or somewhere else. Her heart swelled at his words, and for the first time in a long while, Nyara felt the peace she had long sought. She didn't have to have all the answers, and she didn't have to choose between her past and her future. She could forge her own path, one that was uniquely hers, with Marcus by her side. I think I've already found my place, she said quietly, her voice steady now. And it's with you. In that moment, everything fell into place. The uncertainty, the fear, the doubt, it all melted away as she realized that love, true love, wasn't about perfection. It was about finding someone who saw you for who you were, who accepted your flaws, your fears, your past, and still chose to stand by your side. Nyara and Marcus didn't know what the future would hold. They didn't know if their love would be accepted by her people, or what challenges they would face along the way. But one thing was certain. They were ready to face it all, together. And in that certainty, Nyara knew that the bond they shared was stronger than any obstacle they could encounter. It was the legacy of love unbreakable, undeniable, and eternal.